As an author, we know that when and where our stories take place sometimes literally makes or breaks the plot and the characters, for better and for worse. What have I learned about writing fantasy in historical places because of writing well? The Myrna Annals, Scotland, England, y'all haven't gotten along for a way long time. Let's check it. Welcome on back to another episode of Sitting Down, Standing Up, whatever you want to call it, with Soul Writer. My name is Jenna O'Malley. I am your Soul Writer, author of sci-fi fantasy with dashes of romance and nerdy references such as the Myrna Annals. A story where literally a Scottish dude figures out how messed up British politics really are because he becomes a vampire. Oh my goodness, Ian! So, as with the previous documentary where I went kind of into Neftiri's family and background, I want to go a little bit more into Ian's. If you're joining back in, thank you so much to my friend, writer Sam Wicker, for inviting so many of us to partake in this, and oh boy, I think this might be the last one we're going to do for this, but quite enjoyable. So, if you want to check out the playlist or anything of that nature, description box below would be your place to go for all the information, or of course, just simply follow Sam and everybody else who's partaking on the playlist. Let's go ahead and look at two documentaries in part this time. The first one that I really paid close attention to is actually a multi-part documentary. You can find a playlist version of this is what I'm hinting at, or the 6-hour version that I went ahead and linked below of the Stuart Kings and following the Stuart dynasty as rulers of England. Let me go ahead and set the stage how dudes who are Scottish end up on the British throne because someone didn't want to have kids, and yes, I make fun of her for it, but I probably really shouldn't. Infertility. Anyway, so because, let me set the scene. I had a choice to make with the Myrna Annals. Did I want the plot to take place before Elizabeth I and Shakespeare, or after? And I decided to pick up with after, apparently. A good chunk of the plot and lore to the world takes place before 1665, as we find out through Ian's eyes. But I had to decide, did I want a British ruler on the throne of a British country, English ruler of an English country, or the Scottish kings and all of their chaos they brought in? Because if you don't know what happened, Elizabeth I never had a baby. She's the daughter of Henry VIII that became queen, and she largely continued a lot of the things that her father started in her life as far as artistry goes, backing Shakespeare and other playwrights and other artists, right? And when she passed away, she left her throne to her baby cousin, James VI of Scotland. So he becomes James I of England, 6th of Scotland, I think it's 6th. So yeah, James, kind of a little bit of a spoiled brat. All of the Stuart Kings are, and by the time we get to Outlander, oh my god, and Bonnie Prince Charlie in the 1800s, which I stayed far away from, it's quite interesting. I poke fun at him a couple times in book 3, but it's quite interesting. And I really had to decide during which era. So the King Charles on the throne is not the Barney Prince Charlie. This is going to be James's son or grandson, I think, if I remember correctly, on the throne. And it's during a time when the Catholics are really trying to get a control back on England yet again, and I kind of brought those through lines into the plot. Also, all of those through lines of what happens in the Stuart Kings documentary includes one key event that, sorry, not sorry, to St. Mardigan, it's all your fault, London Bridge burned down, apparently. So, in book, spoiler, 3, there's a fight scene that takes place in London during the burning of London Bridge because of the politics of the era that I set my books in. And at the time that I was writing this, I asked my readers, do you want them to be there or here? There's two places that they could be where they have huge events that are really bad going on. Where do you want? And everyone's like, oh, come on. We all watched Black Butler. We all know why London Bridge is falling down. And it can be St. Mardigan's fault too. So why not? So you can see where you can start looking for these moments in history. And I literally, by the time I had gotten into book 3, was starting to go, okay, what are other events I can find documentaries on that I can listen to while I do chores? Or at the time where we lived, not this house, but 2 places we lived ago, I mowed the grass. So while mowing the grass for an hour and a half, I would be out there listening to documentaries. Or even prior to that, prior to, we all know what happened, March, spring break 2020, I would listen to documentaries on my 1 hour plus long commute. And even just, re-watching stuff that I watched back then. And I'm like, what do I do with this? Now makes sense. Okay? This is why in book 4, between book 3 and book 4, there's a time jump. After London burns down, commerce kind of slows up in certain parts of, Europe to compensate for a huge port. So I had to go and look elsewhere outside of England for problems. But I even found that a lot of, because of what was going on with the Stuart Kings, a lot of British politics vastly shaped Europe during the 16 and 1700s beyond its own borders and isles. Literally, when you have the lead up to what becomes Diana Gabaldon's Outlander, with most of you know Jamie and Claire, what the era I'm in is the baby steps to that chaos at Culloden. So yes, I've done research on Culloden, so I know where people are headed, so that way my characters can act accordingly. Ian, Malice, Mardigan, and Rolf are from each one of the Isles. Mardigan is Welsh, Rolf is British, Malice is Irish, Ian is Scottish, and they each all have their commentary on how this affects history, long run, from definitely book 3 and onwards, where we really largely get into this kind of thing. And this is even why, even as early as book 1, Bound by Fate and Blood, Ian works for the one of the key people for the British Crown who talks to Spain on behalf of what's going on in the Caribbean. Hint, hint. They're going to eventually end up moving to Jamaica. Why? Because of the politics over Jamaica and Scotland. If you know your history, right? So all those tiny little threads started because I watched the Stuart Kings Dynasty documentary series, just as a contextualization of here's an entire couple of 100 years of a Scottish family trying to rule outside of Scotland. How does that fall into, well, a Scottish baron's life? How does it affect Ian? Very much in the same way that with our Ancient Egypt episode, I said the same thing and applied it to Nefertiti. It was free game there. Yes, I did this for other characters, if you're wondering. Frey, the Battle of Bovons in French, or in France, rather. Vauvery, the Swiss Pontifical Guard, because he used to be one. The Silk Roads and how it interconnects. You can really see how what's already available in our own history is ripe for the picking of plot lines that you never even began to imagine. Fill the very craggy holes of the roadmap that you're building for your characters and readers. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, like, comment, share, subscribe, definitely to the people in the description box below. And if you're here all the way to the end, we've got some changes coming up. Let me know what you want to see most out of this channel in the future. Take care of yourself. You've always been worth it.